Sarah Martinez had always been different from other girls her age. While her classmates spent their evenings watching movies or chatting on social media, she was at the gym, pushing her body to its absolute limits. At 22, she stood 5 feet 6 inches tall with a lean, muscular frame that spoke of countless hours of training. Her dark eyes held a determination that made people look twice, though most assumed she was just another fitness enthusiast. The local CrossFit gym in Virginia Beach had become her second home over the past 3 years. She arrived every morning at 5 sharp before the regular crowd filtered in. The owner, Marcus, a former Marine, had initially been skeptical when this young woman asked about the most challenging workouts they offered. That skepticism vanished within her first week when she outperformed men twice her size on obstacle courses and endurance tests. "You're not normal," Marcus told her one morning as she finished a brutal workout that had left 3 experienced athletes on the floor. "What's your story?" Sarah simply smiled and grabbed her water bottle. She never talked about her background, never mentioned her family, and certainly never spoke about the dreams that kept her awake at night. Dreams filled with missions, tactical operations, and a burning desire to serve her country in ways most people couldn't imagine. Her apartment was spartanly furnished, with military precision evident in every corner. Books on military strategy lined her shelves alongside biographies of famous special operations soldiers. On her nightstand sat a single photograph of her older brother David in his Army uniform. He had died in Afghanistan 3 years earlier, and his death had changed everything for Sarah. The gym regulars had given up trying to befriend her. She was polite but distant, focused entirely on her training. What they didn't know was that every grueling session was preparation for something bigger. Sarah had applied to join the Navy SEALs through a special experimental program that allowed women to attempt the training for the first time in the program's history. The selection process had been unlike anything she had ever experienced. Months of psychological evaluations, physical tests that pushed her beyond what she thought possible, and interviews with stone-faced military officials who seemed determined to break her resolve. Through it all, she maintained the same quiet intensity that had defined her since childhood. Her acceptance letter had arrived on a Tuesday morning, delivered by a courier who waited while she signed for it. Her hands trembled slightly as she read the words that would change her life forever. She was to report to Naval Special Warfare Training Command in Coronado, California, in 6 weeks for basic underwater demolition/SEAL training, commonly known as BUD/S. The weeks leading up to her departure passed in a blur of final preparations. She sold most of her possessions, keeping only the essentials. Her landlord, Mrs. Chen, an elderly woman who had grown fond of Sarah despite her reserved nature, insisted on cooking her a farewell dinner. "You're going to do something important, aren't you?" Mrs. Chen asked as they sat in the small kitchen, sharing what would be their last meal together. Sarah nodded, unable to speak about the specifics due to the security clearance requirements she had already signed. "I'm going to serve my country," she said simply. The flight to San Diego was her first time on an airplane. She sat by the window watching the landscape change below her as they crossed the country. Other passengers chatted and laughed around her, but Sarah remained focused on what lay ahead. She had studied every aspect of SEAL training she could find, though she knew the reality would be far more challenging than anything she had read. Coronado Naval Base appeared like a fortress rising from the California coastline as her taxi approached the main gate. The driver, a veteran himself, recognized the look of someone reporting for special operations training. "First time at BUD/S?" he asked, glancing in the rearview mirror. "Yes, sir," Sarah replied, her voice steady despite the butterflies in her stomach. "Good luck, kid. You're going to need it." The initial processing took most of her first day. She was issued gear, assigned to a barracks, and given a schedule that would consume every moment of the next 6 months, if she survived that long. The statistics were sobering. Historically, less than 25% of candidates made it through the complete training program. Her barracks assignment placed her in a unique situation. As one of only 3 women in the experimental program, she had been given a single room while the male candidates shared doubles. This isolation, intended for privacy and comfort, instead made her feel more like an outsider than she had anticipated. The other candidates were a diverse group of warriors from various military backgrounds: Marines, Army Rangers, Air Force pararescue specialists, and Navy personnel had all converged on this legendary training ground with the same goal, to earn the coveted Navy SEAL Trident pin. During her first dinner in the mess hall, Sarah chose a table in the corner where she could observe the dynamics of her fellow trainees. Most had formed small groups based on their previous service branches or shared experiences. She listened to their conversations about combat deployments, previous special operations training, and the challenges they expected to face. "That's her," she heard one of them whisper to his companion. "One of the women they're letting try." Sarah pretended not to hear, focusing on her meal while internally preparing for the scrutiny and skepticism she would face. She had expected this reaction and had already decided that her performance would do her talking. The first physical training session the following morning introduced her to the legendary instructors, who would either forge her into a Navy SEAL or break her in the attempt. Chief Petty Officer Rodriguez, a compact man with 20 years of special operations experience, addressed the assembled class with brutal honesty. "Look around you," he commanded. 80% of you will not be here in 6 weeks. The ocean doesn't care about your previous achievements. The enemy doesn't care about your feelings, and neither do we. If you're here for glory or to prove something to someone else, you've already failed. The initial physical screening test separated the prepared from the hopeful within the first hour. Sarah watched as candidates who had seemed confident the night before struggled with basic requirements. She completed each exercise with mechanical precision, drawing curious glances from instructors who were taking careful notes on clipboards. Swimming had always been her strongest skill, developed during countless hours in community pools throughout her childhood. While other candidates fought against the Pacific Ocean waves during their first beach workout, Sarah moved through the water with an efficiency that caught the attention of Instructor Martinez, a former SEAL whose own daughter was Sarah's age. "Where did you learn to swim like that?" he asked as she completed her ocean swim in the top 5% of the class. "Public pool in Richmond, instructor," she replied, using the formal address required during training. "Richmond, Virginia?" "Yes, instructor." He made a note on his clipboard and moved on to the next candidate, but Sarah had seen something in his expression that gave her hope. Respect, perhaps, or at least acknowledgement that she belonged in this challenging environment. The days began to blur together as the training intensity increased. 4 o'clock wake-up calls led to beach runs in the pre-dawn darkness, followed by calisthenics sessions that left even the strongest candidates questioning their life choices. Sarah discovered muscles she never knew existed as her body adapted to demands that pushed human endurance to its limits. Her roommate situation changed in the 3rd week when one of the other women in the program dropped out during a particularly brutal surf passage exercise. The failure wasn't due to lack of physical ability, but rather a panic attack triggered by the cold Pacific water and crashing waves. Sarah watched the ambulance take her away and wondered if she would be next. The remaining female candidate, Jennifer Walsh, was a former Army helicopter pilot whose father and grandfather had both served in special operations. She moved into Sarah's barracks room, and their shared experience as outsiders in this male-dominated environment created an immediate bond. "They're waiting for us to fail," Jennifer observed on their first night as roommates, lying in her bunk and staring at the ceiling. "Then we don't give them the satisfaction," Sarah replied, her voice carrying a quiet confidence that had been building since her first day. The training philosophy of Bud/S was designed to create warriors who could function under the most extreme conditions imaginable. Sleep deprivation, physical exhaustion, and psychological pressure were constant companions. Sarah learned to find moments of rest wherever possible, catnapping between exercises and eating every available calorie to fuel her body's recovery. Her background in individual training served her well, but she quickly realized that SEAL operations were fundamentally team-based. The candidates were divided into boat crews of 7 members each, and their success or failure became collective. Sarah found herself assigned to Boat Crew 4, led by a former Marine Staff Sergeant named Williams, who initially viewed her inclusion with obvious skepticism. The boat crew assignments were where personality conflicts could destroy promising candidates. SAS' quiet intensity clashed with some of the more boisterous personalities in her crew, particularly Jackson, a former college football player whose loud confidence masked deep insecurities about his swimming abilities. "Why are we carrying dead weight?" Jackson complained after a particularly challenging surf passage exercise. where Sarah had actually performed better than half the crew. Staff Sergeant Williams, who had been quietly observing the crew dynamics, stepped in before the situation could escalate. "Martinez saved your ass out there when you got caught in that riptide," he said bluntly. "Maybe focus on your own performance instead of worrying about hers." The incident marked a turning point in Sarah's relationship with her boat crew. While she would never be fully accepted by all members, her consistent performance and willingness to help struggling teammates gradually earned their respect. She began tutoring Jackson in swimming techniques during their limited free time, helping him improve his weakest skill area. The psychological warfare aspect of Bud/S training intensified as the weeks progressed. Instructors would appear at random times during the night, ordering entire classes to run to the beach in their underwear for impromptu training sessions. Sleep became a luxury, and candidates learned to function on 2 or 3 hours of rest per night. Sarah's mental preparation proved crucial during these challenging periods. While other candidates became increasingly irritable and prone to conflicts, she maintained her focus on the ultimate goal. Her visualization techniques developed during her civilian training helped her push through moments when her body wanted to quit. The famous Hell Week loomed on the horizon like a storm cloud. This 5-day period of continuous training with minimal sleep was the crucible that separated future SEALs from everyone else. Sarah had read about Hell Week in every book and article she could find, but she knew that no amount of preparation could fully ready anyone for the reality of the experience. As the 6th week of training began, Sarah looked around the mess hall and realized that their class had already shrunk by more than half. Empty chairs marked the places where candidates had rung the bell that signified their voluntary withdrawal from the program. Each departure reinforced her determination to see the training through to completion, regardless of the cost. The ocean had become both enemy and ally during her time at Coronado. Its cold embrace during early morning swims had initially shocked her system, but she had learned to work with its rhythms rather than fighting against them. The instructors often said that the ocean would teach lessons that no classroom could provide, and Sarah was beginning to understand their meaning. Her relationship with Jennifer had deepened into a friendship built on mutual respect and shared struggle. They supported each other through the darkest moments of training, knowing that their success would prove something important, not just for themselves, but for all the women who might follow in their footsteps. The weight of that responsibility sometimes felt heavier than the gear they carried during conditioning marches. Sarah knew that her every action was being scrutinized by military officials who were still debating whether women belonged in special operations units. The pressure to be perfect was enormous, but she had learned to channel that pressure into motivation rather than allowing it to become a burden. Her family remained unaware of her true activities. The security requirements meant that she could only tell them she was attending advanced Navy training on the West Coast. Her mother's weekly phone calls provided a connection to the world outside Coronado, though Sarah found it increasingly difficult to relate to concerns about everyday civilian life. The transformation happening within her was more profound than just physical conditioning. The young woman who had arrived at Coronado 6 weeks earlier had been replaced by someone harder, more focused, and absolutely committed to earning the right to wear the Navy SEAL trident. Every day brought new challenges that tested her limits, and every day she discovered reserves of strength she hadn't known existed. As Hell Week approached, Sarah Martinez stood on the beach during her final evening of relative normalcy, watching the sunset over the Pacific Ocean. Tomorrow would begin the most challenging period of her life, but she felt ready. The scared young woman who had boarded a plane in Virginia had been forged into something new during her time at Bud/S. She thought about her brother David and the conversation they had shared before his deployment to Afghanistan. He had told her that true warriors weren't born. They were made through trials that stripped away everything unnecessary until only the essential remained. Standing on that beach, feeling the cold sand between her toes and listening to the eternal rhythm of the waves, Sarah finally understood what he had meant. Hell Week began at sunset on Sunday with the sound of machine gun blanks firing overhead and instructors screaming orders through megaphones. Sarah had been lying in her bunk trying to rest before the storm when explosions erupted throughout the barracks compound. Smoke filled the hallways as candidates stumbled out of their rooms, disoriented and struggling to understand what was happening. "This is it," Instructor Rodriguez's voice cut through the chaos. "Hell Week starts now. Everyone on the beach in 2 minutes wearing nothing but shorts and t-shirts. The next 120 hours would test every aspect of their training and mental toughness. Sarah grabbed her gear and ran toward the beach with the rest of her surviving classmates, her heart pounding with anticipation and fear. The cold Pacific air hit her skin like a slap, but she forced herself to focus on the instructor's commands rather than her body's discomfort. The first night was a preview of the torture to come. Endless physical exercises in the surf zone left candidates shivering uncontrollably as their body temperatures dropped to dangerous levels. Sarah learned to find warmth through constant movement, never allowing herself to stop even when exhaustion made every step feel impossible. By dawn of the first day, 3 more candidates had quit. The bell that signified surrender rang out across the beach as another hopeful SEAL walked away from his dreams. Sarah watched each departure with mixed emotions. Sadness for their broken hopes, but also relief that the competition was becoming less intense. Jennifer collapsed during the second day of Hell Week, her body shutting down after 36 hours of continuous exertion. The medical staff rushed her to the base hospital, where she was diagnosed with severe hypothermia and exhaustion. Sarah visited her friend during a brief medical break, finding Jennifer connected to warming blankets and IV fluids. "Don't you dare quit because of me," Jennifer whispered, her voice barely audible. "Finish this thing and make them all eat their words." Sarah squeezed her friend's hand and made a promise she intended to keep. Jennifer's departure meant she was now the only woman remaining in the program, carrying the hopes and expectations of everyone who believed women could succeed in special operations. The hallucinations began on the third night. Sleep deprivation and physical exhaustion created a dream-like state where reality became fluid. Sarah saw her brother David standing on the beach during a midnight run, encouraging her to keep going when her legs felt like they might collapse. She knew it wasn't real, but the vision provided strength when she needed it most. Boat Crew 4 had been reduced to 5 members as Hell Week progressed. Jackson, the former football player who had initially doubted Sarah's abilities, became one of her strongest supporters as they faced the challenges together. Their shared suffering had created bonds that transcended their earlier conflicts. "You're tougher than most Marines I served with," he told her during a brief rest period on Wednesday morning, his voice hoarse from shouting over the surf. The rock portage exercise on Thursday nearly broke her spirit. Candidates were required to carry heavy boats over sharp rocks, while instructors threw buckets of cold water on them and screamed criticisms of their technique. Sarah's hands were bleeding from gripping the rough boat handles, but she refused to let go even when other team members suggested they take a break. Staff Sergeant Williams had become her unofficial mentor during Hell Week, offering quiet words of encouragement when the instructors weren't watching. As a former Special Operations Marine, he understood the unique pressures Sarah faced as the program's only remaining female candidate. "The press is watching," he warned her during a medical check on Thursday afternoon. "There are reporters camped outside the base, hoping to get a story about the woman who quit Hell Week. Don't give them that satisfaction." Sarah hadn't known about the media attention, and the knowledge added another layer of pressure to her already overwhelming circumstances. She was no longer just fighting for her own dreams, but representing every woman who wanted to serve in combat roles. The final night of Hell Week was the longest of Sarah's life. Her body had reached a state of complete exhaustion where she functioned purely on willpower and muscle memory. The instructors seemed determined to break the remaining candidates before the finish line, ordering increasingly difficult exercises as dawn approached. At 6:47 a.m. on Friday morning, Instructor Rodriguez blew the whistle that officially ended Hell Week. 23 candidates remained from the original class of '84, their faces showing the strain of 5 days that had pushed human endurance beyond normal limits. Sarah stood among them, swaying slightly but still on her feet, as the instructors announced their achievement. "Congratulations," Chief Rodriguez said, his voice carrying a note of respect that hadn't been there at the beginning of training. "You have survived Hell Week. But this is just the beginning of your journey to become Navy SEALs." The medical examination following Hell Week revealed the toll the training had taken on Sarah's body. She had lost 15 pounds, her hands required stitches from rope burns, and her feet were covered in blisters that made walking painful. But her vital signs remained strong, and the medical staff cleared her to continue training. The weeks following Hell Week brought new challenges, as the program shifted focus from pure endurance to technical skills. Sarah excelled in weapons training. Her steady hands and natural marksmanship making her one of the top shooters in the class. The muscle memory developed through years of civilian training translated perfectly to military applications. Underwater demolition training tested a different set of skills. Sarah learned to work with explosives in conditions where a single mistake could be fatal. The precision required reminded her of surgery, demanding complete focus and absolute attention to detail. Her performance impressed the instructors, who had initially questioned whether she possessed the technical aptitude for special operations work. Combat diving pushed Sarah's swimming abilities to new levels. She learned to navigate underwater while wearing heavy gear and carrying equipment that would have been impossible to manage during her civilian training. The cold Pacific waters that had initially shocked her system became a familiar environment where she felt confident and capable. The teamwork aspects of SEAL training became increasingly important as the program progressed. Sarah's boat crew had developed into a cohesive unit where individual strengths compensated for others' weaknesses. Her analytical mind often identified tactical solutions that her teammates missed, while their experience in combat situations provided context she lacked. Land warfare training introduced Sarah to combat scenarios she had only read about in books. Room clearing exercises, patrol formations, and ambush tactics became second nature as she adapted military theory to practical application. Her performance earned grudging respect from instructors who had initially doubted her combat potential. The psychological evaluations continued throughout the training program, with military psychologists assessing each candidate's mental stability and suitability for special operations work. Sarah's sessions revealed a personality profile that surprised even her. She tested exceptionally high for emotional control under stress and decision-making ability in crisis situations. "You have an unusual psychological makeup," Dr. Stevens, the chief psychologist, told her after one evaluation session. "Most successful SEAL candidates show high aggression scores, but you demonstrate something different: controlled intensity. It's quite remarkable." Sarah's reputation within the SEAL community began to grow as word spread about her performance. Senior instructors from other training programs visited Coronado to observe the woman who was challenging traditional assumptions about combat roles. Their presence added pressure, but also validation, that her achievements were being taken seriously at the highest levels. The demolition phase of training was where Sarah truly distinguished herself. Her careful attention to detail and mathematical precision made her naturally suited for calculating explosive charges and timing sequences. What took other candidates hours to master, she grasped intuitively, leading to her appointment as her boat crew's primary demolitions specialist. Advanced combat medical training revealed another of Sarah's hidden talents. Her steady hands and calm demeanor under pressure made her ideally suited for battlefield medicine. She learned to treat gunshot wounds, perform emergency surgery, and manage trauma patients in conditions that would challenge experienced physicians. The navigation exercises took the class into California's desert and mountain regions, where they learned to move undetected through hostile territory. Sarah's civilian hiking experience proved valuable as she adapted quickly to land navigation using only compass and map. Her route planning often proved more efficient than those chosen by candidates with extensive military experience. As the training program entered its final phases, Sarah realized that she had become a different person than the young woman who had arrived at Coronado months earlier. The physical transformation was obvious. Her body was leaner and stronger than ever before, but the mental changes were more profound. She had developed confidence in her abilities that couldn't be shaken by others' doubts or criticisms. The leadership rotations gave each candidate opportunity to command their boat crew during training exercises. When Sarah's turn came, she faced the challenge of leading men who had initially questioned her presence in the program. Her quiet competence and tactical intelligence earned their trust as she successfully guided the team through complex scenarios. The instructor evaluations painted a picture of a candidate who exceeded expectations in almost every measurable category. Sarah's scores placed her in the top 10% of the class across technical skills, physical performance, and leadership potential. But she knew that numbers alone wouldn't determine her ultimate success. The underwater knot-tying exercise became legendary among her classmates for Sarah's performance. While other candidates struggled to complete the required knots while holding their breath underwater, she finished the entire sequence with time to spare. Her technique was so efficient that it became the standard taught to future classes. Combat swimming in full gear tested the limits of even the strongest candidates. Sarah's superior technique allowed her to complete distance swims that exhausted larger, more muscular teammates. The instructors began using her stroke mechanics as an example of how proper technique could overcome physical disadvantages. The parachute training phase introduced Sarah to military freefall operations. Despite her complete lack of civilian skydiving experience, she adapted quickly to the technical demands of military parachuting. Her attention to detail and ability to remain calm under pressure made her a natural in an environment where mistakes could be fatal. Small unit tactics training placed emphasis on real-world scenarios that SEAL teams might encounter in combat deployments. Sarah's analytical mind excelled at developing solutions to complex tactical problems, often identifying approaches that more experienced military personnel had overlooked. The foreign weapons training exposed candidates to equipment they might encounter in overseas deployments. Sarah's mechanical aptitude allowed her to quickly master weapons systems from different countries and manufacturers. Her instruction in small arms repair made her valuable as someone who could maintain equipment under field conditions. As graduation approached, Sarah reflected on the journey that had brought her to this point. The young woman who had trained alone in a Virginia gym seemed like someone from another lifetime. The experiences of SEAL training had forged her into a warrior, capable of operating in the most challenging environments on Earth. The final exercise was a comprehensive test of everything learned during the program. Sarah's boat crew was tasked with infiltrating a simulated enemy compound, gathering intelligence, and extracting without detection. The mission required swimming, land navigation, combat skills, and teamwork, all areas where she had excelled throughout training. Under cover of darkness, the team moved through the Pacific surf and onto the beach near their objective. Sarah's navigation led them through rough terrain to their target, where her demolition skills enabled them to breach the compound's defenses. The mission succeeded perfectly, demonstrating that she had truly earned her place among America's elite warriors. Standing on the beach after the successful exercise, Sarah Martinez knew that she had achieved something unprecedented in American military history. In less than 24 hours, she would become the first woman to graduate from Navy SEAL training, but more importantly, she had proven to herself that she belonged in this elite community. The graduation ceremony took place on a crisp California morning, with families gathered to witness their loved ones receive the coveted Navy SEAL Trident pin. Sarah stood in formation with her 22 surviving classmates, wearing the dress white uniform that marked her transformation from civilian to elite warrior. Her parents had flown in from Virginia, still not fully understanding what their daughter had accomplished during her months at Coronado. Admiral Richardson, the commanding officer of Naval Special Warfare Command, personally pinned the trident to Sarah's uniform. The gold insignia felt heavier than she had expected, carrying with it the weight of history and the responsibility of representing every woman who might follow her path into special operations. "Congratulations, Petty Officer Martinez," the Admiral said, his voice carrying across the assembled crowd. "You have earned your place among America's finest warriors." The media attention following graduation was overwhelming. Reporters from major news networks had gathered to document the historic moment, and Sarah found herself thrust into a spotlight she had never sought. Her commanding officers had prepared her for the attention, but the reality of cameras and microphones felt foreign after months of focusing purely on training. The interviews were carefully controlled by Navy public affairs officers who ensured that operational security remained intact while still allowing the historic achievement to be recognized. Sarah answered questions about her motivation and training experience, always emphasizing the teamwork and dedication required rather than her individual accomplishments. "This isn't just about me," she told one reporter. "This is about proving that capability matters more than gender when it comes to serving our country. Every person who earns this trident has demonstrated the same commitment and skill, regardless of their background." Her first assignment took her to SEAL Team 3, based at Naval Amphibious Base Coronado. The team was preparing for deployment to Afghanistan, where American forces continued counterterrorism operations against Taliban and al-Qaeda remnants. Sarah would be integrating into Bravo Platoon, a unit with extensive combat experience and a reputation for successful missions in challenging environments. The platoon leader, Lieutenant Commander Peterson, was a veteran SEAL with 4 combat deployments who had initially been skeptical about accepting a female team member. However, Her training records and instructor recommendations had convinced him to give her a fair opportunity to prove herself within the team structure. "Your reputation precedes you, Martinez," he told her during their first meeting. "But training is one thing, and combat is something entirely different. We'll see how you handle the real world." The pre-deployment training was intense, focusing on the specific challenges they would face in Afghanistan's mountainous terrain and complex tribal dynamics. Sarah excelled in the cultural sensitivity training, demonstrating an intuitive understanding of how to interact with Afghan civilians while maintaining operational security. Her language aptitude became apparent during Pashto instruction, where she quickly mastered basic conversational skills that would be crucial for gathering intelligence from local sources. The ability to communicate directly with Afghan women, who were often reluctant to speak with male soldiers, would prove to be one of her most valuable contributions to the team. The weapons training for Afghanistan focused on longer-range engagements than the close-quarters combat emphasized during Bud/S. Sarah's marksmanship skills translated perfectly to the precision rifles used for overwatch and reconnaissance missions. Her shooting scores consistently placed her among the top marksmen in the platoon. Mountain warfare training took place in the Sierra Nevada range, where conditions closely approximated what they would encounter in Afghanistan. Sarah's endurance and technical climbing skills made her ideally suited for operations in high-altitude environments, where physical conditioning could mean the difference between mission success and failure. The team dynamics slowly evolved as Sarah proved her competence in training exercises. Initial skepticism from some team members gave way to professional respect as she demonstrated technical skills and tactical judgment that matched their own. Her quiet confidence and willingness to accept criticism helped smooth her integration into the close-knit unit. Small unit leadership opportunities during pre-deployment training allowed Sarah to demonstrate her tactical thinking and decision-making abilities. When assigned to lead patrol exercises, her careful planning and attention to detail resulted in successful completion of complex scenarios that challenged more experienced leaders. The intelligence briefings for their upcoming deployment painted a picture of a challenging operational environment where SEAL teams would be conducting direct action missions against high-value targets while also gathering intelligence on terrorist networks. Sarah's role would combine her technical skills with cultural sensitivity requirements, unique to her gender. Advanced medical training prepared the team for combat casualty scenarios they might encounter in Afghanistan. Sarah's steady hands and analytical mind made her the platoon's most skilled combat medic, a designation that carried enormous responsibility for her teammates' survival in life-threatening situations. The final weeks before deployment were spent in intensive rehearsals of mission profiles they expected to encounter overseas. Sarah participated in countless iterations of compound raids, prisoner captures, and intelligence-gathering operations. Her performance convinced even the most skeptical team members that she belonged among their ranks. The farewell ceremony before deployment was emotional for all the SEALs leaving families behind for dangerous overseas assignments. HAS is a business in combat, in movements and discovery, and everyone conceives a combat. Took themselves and mental adjustment to the reality of combat deployment. Sarah used the travel time to review intelligence reports and mission briefs, ensuring she understood every aspect of their operational environment. Bagram Airfield, their initial destination in Afghanistan, was a sprawling military complex that served as the hub for American special operations throughout the region. AGA. The first person was quickly made it clear. A book was a book that she was to be treated as this kind. Several kinds of hands. Was Spartan but functional, private by several metrics of the track. Sarah's living quarters were separate from her male teammates, but she spent most of her time in shared spaces where mission planning and preparation took place. The first mission came just 5 days after their arrival. Intelligence had located a high-value target in a compound near the Pakistan border, and Bravo Platoon was tasked with conducting a night raid to capture or eliminate the terrorist leader. Sarah would serve as the team's designated marksman, providing overwatch during the assault. The helicopter insertion went flawlessly under cover of darkness, with the team fast roping into position without detection by enemy forces. Sarah established her firing position on a ridge overlooking the target compound, while her teammates moved into assault positions around the building. The compound contained more enemy fighters than intelligence had indicated, and the mission quickly escalated into a fierce firefight. Sarah's precision fire eliminated 3 insurgents who were attempting to flank her teammates, demonstrating under combat conditions the skills she had developed during training. The successful completion of their first mission together established Sarah's credibility within the platoon in ways that training exercises could never achieve. Her calm performance under fire and accurate shooting had directly contributed to the mission's success and potentially saved her teammates' lives. Over the following weeks, Sarah participated in multiple combat operations that showcased different aspects of her training and capabilities. Her ability to interact with Afghan women during intelligence-gathering missions provided access to information that would have been impossible for male operators to obtain. The cultural intelligence she gathered from these interactions proved invaluable for understanding the tribal dynamics and political relationships that influenced terrorist activities in their area of operations. Local women often possessed crucial information about insurgent movements and safe houses that they were willing to share only with female soldiers. Her medical skills were put to the test during a mission that went wrong when an improvised explosive device wounded 2 of her teammates. Sarah's emergency medical treatment under fire stabilized both casualties and enabled their successful evacuation to higher-level medical care. Her actions undoubtedly saved their lives. The respect she earned from her teammates was evident in their willingness to trust her with their lives during dangerous missions. The bonds forged in combat created relationships deeper than those formed in any training environment, and Sarah became truly integrated into the brotherhood of warriors she had worked so hard to join. Combat operations in Afghanistan's mountainous terrain required physical endurance and mental toughness that tested even the most capable special operations soldiers. Sarah's conditioning proved more than adequate for the demands of extended missions at high altitude while carrying heavy equipment across difficult terrain. The psychological pressures of combat affected different team members in various ways, but Sarah's mental preparation and emotional stability helped her maintain focus during the most stressful situations. Her ability to remain calm under pressure made her a steadying influence on the entire team. Intelligence-gathering missions often required her to move alone through villages and markets, where a female presence was less suspicious than male soldiers. These solo operations demanded independent judgment and decision-making skills that had been developed during her SEAL training but refined through combat experience. The precision rifle work that had become her specialty proved crucial during multiple missions where long-range accurate fire was needed to protect her teammates or eliminate threats. Her shooting skills, combined with patience and tactical intelligence, made her one of the platoon's most effective assets. The language skills she had developed during pre-deployment training improved rapidly through daily interaction with Afghan civilians and prisoners. Her ability to conduct interrogations and gather intelligence through direct conversation became increasingly valuable as the deployment progressed. Leadership opportunities arose naturally as junior team members looked to her for guidance and example. Her quiet competence and proven combat performance gave her words weight when tactical decisions needed to be made or when team morale required boosting during difficult periods. The physical demands of combat operations in Afghanistan's harsh environment tested equipment and personnel equally. Sarah's gear maintenance skills ensured that her weapons and equipment remained fully functional, despite dust, extreme temperatures, and constant use during extended missions. Winter operations in Afghanistan's mountains presented unique challenges that required adaptation of tactics and equipment. Sarah's cold weather training from Bud/S proved valuable as temperatures dropped and snowfall made movement and visibility difficult during combat missions. The casualty evacuation procedures became routine as the team dealt with wounded teammates and captured enemy personnel who required medical attention. Sarah's medical training made her the primary caregiver during these situations, responsibility she handled with professional competence that saved lives. Local intelligence networks developed during the deployment often relied on Sarah's ability to build relationships with Afghan women who possessed crucial information about terrorist activities. These relationships required cultural sensitivity and personal trust that took months to develop but produced invaluable intelligence. As the deployment neared its halfway point, Sarah had participated in over 40 combat missions and proven herself beyond any doubt as a capable special operations warrior. Her performance had exceeded the expectations of even her strongest supporters, and silenced the critics who had questioned whether women belonged in combat roles. The team dynamics had evolved to the point where Sarah's gender was largely irrelevant to their operational effectiveness. She was evaluated solely on her performance and contributions to mission success, which was exactly the standard she had wanted from the beginning of her SEAL career. The mission that would change everything began like dozens of others during Sarah's deployment. Intelligence had identified a high-value target operating from a compound in the Kunar province, and Bravo Platoon was tasked with conducting a capture operation under cover of darkness. What made this mission different was its political sensitivity. The target was believed to be planning attacks against American diplomatic facilities. Sarah's role in the mission was multifaceted. She would provide overwatch during the initial assault, then join the assault team to help search the compound for intelligence materials and potentially interrogate any female family members who might possess valuable information about the target's network and activities. The helicopter insertion took them deep into Taliban-controlled territory where American forces rarely operated. The isolation meant that backup support would be hours away if the mission encountered unexpected complications. Every team member understood that they would be entirely dependent on their own resources and capabilities. The compound was larger than their intelligence had indicated, with multiple buildings and defensive positions that suggested the target had been preparing for possible military action. Sarah established her overwatch position on a rocky outcropping that provided clear lines of sight to all approaches, while remaining concealed from enemy observation. The assault began precisely at 0300 hours, with explosions breaching the compound's outer defenses as the team moved swiftly toward their objectives. Sarah's precision fire eliminated 2 sentries who attempted to alert other defenders, her suppressed rifle ensuring that the element of surprise was maintained during the critical opening moments. But intelligence failures became apparent as the mission progressed. Instead of the small group of terrorists they expected to encounter, the compound housed a much larger force of well-armed insurgents who had been expecting an American raid. The team found themselves outnumbered and surrounded by enemies who knew the terrain intimately. The firefight that erupted was more intense than anything Sarah had experienced during her deployment. Rocket-propelled grenades exploded around her position as enemy fighters attempted to eliminate the Overwatch sniper who was causing significant casualties among their ranks. Her ability to remain calm and continue engaging targets proved crucial to her teammates' survival. Lieutenant Commander Peterson's voice crackled over the radio with updated orders as the situation deteriorated. "Martinez, we need you down here now. The compound is larger than mapped, and we're taking heavy fire from positions we can't identify from ground level." Sarah quickly displaced from her overwatch position, moving under fire to join her teammates in the compound. Her transition from sniper to assault team member demonstrated the versatility that special operations demanded, adapting to changing tactical situations while maintaining combat effectiveness. Inside the compound, the team discovered evidence that their target had been planning something much more significant than intelligence had suggested. Documents and equipment indicated preparations for a major terrorist attack, possibly involving chemical weapons that could cause mass casualties among civilian populations. The search for intelligence materials was complicated by the ongoing firefight and the discovery of several women and children, who were being held as human shields by the insurgents. Sarah's presence became crucial as she was the only team member who could effectively communicate with and calm the terrified civilians. One of the women, speaking in broken English mixed with Pashto, indicated that important documents were hidden in a separate building that hadn't appeared on their intelligence maps. Sarah's language skills enabled her to understand that the woman was offering this information in exchange for protection for her children. The tactical situation required splitting the team, with half maintaining defensive positions while the others investigated the additional intelligence lead. Sarah volunteered to lead the search team, her cultural training and language skills making her the logical choice for interacting with any additional civilians they might encounter. The secondary building contained a treasure trove of intelligence materials, including detailed plans for attacks against American facilities in multiple countries. Sarah's training in document exploitation enabled her to quickly identify the most critical materials, while enemy fire continued around the compound. But the intelligence discovery came with a terrible cost. As Sarah emerged from the building carrying classified documents, an explosion from an improvised explosive device knocked her unconscious and left her with injuries that would require immediate medical evacuation. Her teammates rushed to her position under heavy enemy fire. The evacuation became a running firefight as the team attempted to reach their helicopter landing zone while carrying their wounded teammate and the crucial intelligence materials. Sarah drifted in and out of consciousness, her training allowing her to maintain awareness of the tactical situation even while seriously injured. The helicopter extraction was completed under fire, with Sarah being loaded aboard while still clutching the intelligence documents she had risked her life to secure. Her dedication to the mission, even while wounded, exemplified the commitment that defines special operations personnel. The medical evacuation took her first to a combat hospital in Afghanistan, then to Germany for more advanced treatment, and finally to Walter Reed Medical Center in Washington, D.C. The injuries were serious but not life-threatening. A traumatic brain injury, multiple fractures, and severe concussion that would require months of recovery. During her hospitalization, the intelligence she had secured led to the prevention of multiple terrorist attacks across several countries. The documents revealed a coordinated network planning simultaneous strikes that could have resulted in hundreds of American casualties. Her actions had literally saved lives on multiple continents. The recovery process was frustrating for someone accustomed to peak physical condition and constant activity. Sarah struggled with headaches, memory issues, and balance problems that made even simple tasks challenging. The medical staff assured her that full recovery was possible, but it would require patience and dedication to rehabilitation. Military leadership visited regularly during her hospitalization, briefing her on how the intelligence she had secured was being used to dismantle terrorist networks and prevent attacks. The strategic impact of her actions extended far beyond the single mission where she had been wounded. The media attention surrounding her injury and the mission's success thrust Sarah back into the public eye, but this time the focus was on her combat heroism rather than her historic achievement as the first female SEAL. The narrative shifted from gender barriers to operational excellence and personal sacrifice. The physical therapy regimen was designed to restore her capabilities for potential return to active duty, though the severity of her injuries made her future in special operations uncertain. Sarah approached rehabilitation with the same intensity she had brought to SEAL training, determined to regain full functionality. Psychological counseling was part of her recovery process, addressing not just the trauma of combat injury, but also the unique pressures she had faced as a pioneering woman in special operations. The mental health professionals helped her process experiences that had no precedent in military history. Her teammates from Bravo Platoon visited whenever they were stateside, maintaining the bonds forged in combat while bringing news from ongoing operations in Afghanistan. Their continued acceptance and respect validated her membership in the special operations community in ways that official recognition could not. The award ceremony took place 6 months after her injury, with Sarah receiving the Silver Star for gallantry in action and the Purple Heart for wounds received in combat. The recognition placed her among the most decorated female service members in American military history. But the real test came during a routine evening at Walter Reed, when Sarah was approached by a young female Marine Corps officer who had heard about her story. The officer was considering applying for special operations training and wanted advice from someone who had successfully navigated the challenges. "Is it worth it?" the young officer asked. "All the scrutiny, the pressure, the physical demands, is it worth proving that women can do this job?" Sarah considered the question carefully, thinking about everything she had experienced since that first day at Bud/S training. The pain, the isolation, the constant pressure to be perfect, and finally the injuries that might end her operational career, balanced against the lives saved, missions accomplished, and barriers broken for future generations. "It's not about proving anything to anyone else," she finally replied. "It's about proving to yourself that you can rise to meet any challenge. The country needs the best warriors it can get, regardless of gender. If you have what it takes, then yes, it's worth everything it costs." The conversation continued late into the evening, with Sarah sharing insights from her training and combat experience while carefully avoiding classified information about specific operations. She realized that mentoring the next generation of female special operations personnel might be as important as her own operational achievements. Physical recovery progressed slowly but steadily, with Sarah gradually regaining the capabilities that had made her an effective SEAL operator. The medical board would ultimately determine whether she could return to active duty, but her rehabilitation efforts demonstrated the same dedication that had carried her through Bud/S training. The intelligence community continued analyzing the documents she had secured during her final mission, with new discoveries regularly emerging that led to additional counterterrorism operations. The strategic impact of her actions continued expanding long after her injury, validating the risks taken during that dangerous night raid. Her story became part of SEAL training curriculum, used to illustrate the importance of cultural intelligence and the unique capabilities that diverse team members could bring to special operations. The example of her combat performance helped convince military leadership to expand opportunities for women in combat roles. The psychological evaluation for return to duty revealed that Sarah had not only recovered from her injuries, but had emerged psychologically stronger from the experience. The trauma of combat and injury had been processed in healthy ways that actually enhanced her resilience and tactical judgment. But the decision about her future came not from medical boards or military bureaucracy, but from Sarah herself. During a quiet moment of reflection at Walter Reed, she realized that her most important contributions might lie beyond active operations. The next generation of warriors needed leaders who had proven themselves in combat while also understanding the unique challenges faced by women in special operations. The choice between returning to operational duty and accepting a leadership role in special operations training represented the next chapter in a career that had already made history. Sarah Martinez had proven beyond doubt that women could succeed in America's most demanding military roles, but her greatest impact might come from ensuring that others could follow the path she had pioneered. Standing in her hospital room looking out at the Washington skyline, Sarah made her decision. The warrior who had elbowed through every barrier in her path would now help tear down those barriers for everyone who came after her. Her war room days were ending, but her mission was far from complete. The secret files that documented her journey from civilian to Navy SEAL would inspire countless others to believe that any dream was achievable through dedication, courage, and unwavering commitment to excellence. The young woman who had once trained alone in a Virginia gym had become something more than a decorated combat veteran. She had become proof that America's strength lay not in excluding anyone from service, but in demanding excellence from everyone willing to earn it. Her legacy would be measured not just in missions completed or lives saved, but in the doors opened for all who would follow her extraordinary example.